There's something strange in the fog. I was about to go home, but after everything that happened, I guess staying later at work is what saved my life that day. It was 3 PM on a Friday and I was about to submit the final report for the week. "Any plans for the weekend, Blake?" my coworker Joe asked as he leaned on my desk. "Just gonna sleep until I can't sleep anymore," I replied. "Well, we're almost out of the woods. Just one more week until the deadline," he said. "Yeah, well, if the client's not satisfied, then we wasted a lot of time. And he does look like the type that's never satisfied." "Bye guys," Dustin said in passing as he headed for the exit. We waved him off silently. "See that guy?" Joe crossed his arms. 3 PM and boom, he's out of the office. Not 1 minute later. There was a female voice shouting from the back of the room. "Hey Joe, did you send me that thing I asked?" "I'll send it to you Monday," Joe shouted back. He turned back to me and rolled his eyes, saying it quietly, "And then there's Jessica, never leaving the office." I silently nodded, tapping the enter key on my keyboard and shutting down the computer. "You gonna head home soon?" I asked as I packed my things. "Yeah, in a few. Gotta finish one thing." "Well, you take it easy now, Joe. You know that the company doesn't encourage staying late on Fridays." I winked at him as I stood up. Joe was about to say something, but he was rudely interrupted. A noise blared so loudly that I thought my eardrums would pop out. Sirens. Although I could tell the source was really far away, it was still agonizingly loud. My co-workers clasped their hands over their ears, shouting something, but couldn't hear them over the sound of the sirens. The wailing dropped and then completely ceased, but only for a moment. "What the f..." was all Joe managed to mutter, before the sirens started blaring once more, rising in tone and remaining constant for another 10 seconds or so, before stopping once more. I myself had been holding my hands on my ears, bracing myself for another blare, but luckily it never came. "What the hell was that, Christian?" our manager asked, emerging from his office. "An enemy attack. Maybe Iran decided to go for the preemptive strike," Lorraine said, as the remaining 6 of us who were still in the office gathered around. "What in the..." Christian said, as he turned his gaze to the window. The rest of us jerked our heads in the same direction and my jaw dropped to the floor. The street outside, which was clearly visible on a normal day, was completely obscured by a yellow-looking fog. We rushed to the window, squinting to try and see something. I couldn't make anything out further than a few feet away. The entirety of the view provided nothing but yellow. "Is that smog?" Joe asked, leaning forward to the point of almost pressing his face against the glass. We stared in silence for a moment before another sound, which I likened to an engine whirring, appeared. At first I couldn't tell what it was, but as it got louder, it became apparent that the whirring was actually coming from a helicopter and it was somewhere above the building, even though we couldn't see it. "Please go inside the closest building you can find and stay there until further notice." A voice that sounded like it was coming through a megaphone blasted along with the helicopter's whirring. "Repeat, do not try to go outside under any circumstances. Stay inside and lock your doors." The position of the voice seemed to change slightly, making it difficult to pinpoint where exactly it was coming from. I placed my ear against the pane of glass, wincing at how cold it was. "Repeat, stay inside, and... oh shit, watch out!" The helicopter's engine roared above our heads so loudly that I thought for a moment it would crash on top of us. It then faded to a distance, before there was a crash so loud that the entire building shook momentarily. "Holy fuck!" Joe said, stepping away from the window. The entire office was eerily silent all of a sudden. No whirring of helicopters, not even my co-workers' voices. I heard my own heart beating against my chest. What the fuck just happened? Did the helicopter crash? I asked with a quivering voice, more to kill the silence than to get an answer. My co-worker Milo strode to his desk, snatched the jacket off his chair and hastily put it on. "What are you doing, Milo?" Christian asked him, as the rest of us shot him judgmental glances. "My family is out there. I have to go get them," he said and started towards the exit. Whoa, slow down there, cowboy." Joe stopped in front of him, holding his hands out in a stop sign. "Didn't you hear what they said? We can't go outside now." "Get out of my way, damn it." Milo pushed him aside and went down the lobby. The rest of us shouted after him, trying to convince him to stay, but he ignored us. He forcefully pushed the glass entrance door open and stepped outside. A gust of cold air immediately entered the room, along with yellow wisps of the fog, which twirled around and disappeared shortly after. Milo disappeared in the wall of yellow within a second of stepping outside, and the rest of us instantly went quiet. We held our breaths in anticipation, staring at the door in silence. After about a minute, we started to assume that Milo either safely made it to his car and was about to start it, or he quietly choked to death on the way there. What happened to Milo though was much worse than what any of us assumed. Joe took the initiative to approach the door and lock it, holding his shirt over his mouth along the way. There was a loud scream just outside the building, which nearly made me jump out of my skin. I heard my co-workers gasp and I took a step back before a figure rushed into the door with a loud bang, making it shake unsteadily. Joe, who was right in front of the door, screamed and recoiled in surprise. It was Milo, his face and hands pressed against the glass, and the look on his expression contorted in fear as if he'd just seen a ghost. "Open the door," he said in a quick breath. I took a step forward for better observation, and it was only then that I realised how Milo was. His skin was completely covered in blisters, huge and pulsating, that looked like they would explode on the slightest touch. His clothes had tiny holes in it, as if they were eaten away by moths. I was so taken aback by this that I froze immediately. "Hurry, there's something out there," Milo repeated, banging on the door with his fist and looking over his shoulder. I wanted to do it, to rush to the door and let him in, but I knew it would be a bad idea. I couldn't risk letting that fog inside and putting the rest of us in danger. "Blake, please." His pleading eyes locked with mine. "Joe, what are you doing? Open the door," Lorraine shouted from behind. "No, we can't let that fog in," Joe rebutted. I looked at the rest of my co-workers, most of who were as frozen as I was, seemingly afraid that the door might break at any moment under Milo's weight, and then I heard it, a blood-curdling, high-pitched screech that came from the street, sounding like no animal I had ever heard before. It made shivers run down my spine, and it must have been mutual, because Milo looked over his shoulder once more and said, now in a more panicked tone, "Oh God, it's here! Oh God!" He looked directly back at us once more, his eyes desperately darting from one co-worker to another as he banged on the door, begging us to let him in. And then something pulled him back into the street, making him disappear into the yellow fog as he screamed bloody murder. The next few seconds were a cacophony of screams, combined with something that grotesquely reminded me of meat cutting. Milo's voice gradually got quieter, stopping after what seemed like an eternity, and we were once again left in utter silence, holding our breaths nervously. And then another bang resounded on the door, making our female co-worker scream this time. "Fuck!" Joe turned around and ran back a few steps, before facing the door once more. The pane of glass now had a blood stain on it, and under it was a severed human forearm. No, not severed. The stump looked like the arm had been ripped right off, the fingers frozen in stiff contraction. "Get back! Get back!" My fight or flight instincts kicked in and I turned around, shouting at the co-workers. Needless to say, they didn't want to stick around for the show, so we ran back into the office and locked the door, barring it as quickly as we could with desks and chairs. "What the fuck was that?" Joe asked. "Did you guys see that?" Lorraine and Jessica were crying, desperately trying to call someone on their phones, but after some time we came to the conclusion that there was no service. "Alright, everyone calm down," Joe said, running his fingers through his hair, visibly as stressed out as the rest of us. "Help will surely be here soon. All we gotta do is wait." We reluctantly agreed, figuring that the second option was to go outside and leave, which was a no-go. I approached the window once more, and as I stared outside in the impenetrable fog, I could only think of one thing. This was no fucking fog.